Hey everyone, it's Ron Robitaille again, going to part 2 of my Rabbit Remix overview. As always, if you're interested, please go to rabbitremix.com and sign up to get more information. It should be out in the next week or so, and going to keep posting stuff about it here and on my Twitter as well, RyRibs. All right, so if you watched the last video, I was going over how text remixing works, right? How we can take different things, pull them apart, put them back together, create new prompts, create, drop downs out of natural lists, be them paragraph lists or comma separated lists. I neglected to mention that we can hide some of these boxes. Like, for example, this is an in between. We don't really need to see it. I could always go over and double click and have it be kind of ingested, which is kind of cool to save space and save, workflow complexity. But this video, I want to focus on, the chat, like chat GPT, like those type of conversations. Because building text up is great, right? But, we need to do something with it, right? You need to have these basic building blocks to build some stuff, build some things that are kind of interesting. And then, let's get to actually using it. So I'm going to do a new canvas here. I'm going to start fresh. All right, a fresh canvas. I'm going to bring out, I have two windows here, a chat and completion. I'll explain the difference in a second. So chat is kind of what you'd see at, I'm going to get rid of this menu bar, kind of what you would see at a, the OpenAI UI or, the regular chat kind of things. It's got a system. We're talking back and forth with GPT. You can select your model, temperature, how many responses, I'll get into that some other time. But for now, we can just say, and the chat is important because instead of just being one-off, completions, the whole context is taken into effect, right? Again, this is nothing groundbreaking. This is just how it works, but it's going to be important in the context of what we do with it later, right? See, I'm not referencing wolves anymore. I'm just saying common ones because this conversation has the context in it. And if you watched the other video, which I hope you did, or else this is going to be hella confusing, talking about wolves, awesome. As you can see, these are all just string objects in my system, whether it's something that I said or whether it's something that it said. So anything that they say, I can just easily pull out as a new text object, which is just, again, just a reference to this text that was created. Maybe something that is said I want to use in another prompt. Maybe I want to use it for an image prompt. Maybe I just want to do something else with it, like here's this gray wolves. Maybe I want to come in here and say, more info for other prompt, whatever. And then now I have this, mixed up version of what it was saying plus what I'm saying, drag that out all together, merged over here. Maybe I want to add this also, and that becomes part of my output. I can keep conversing here. Populations. So yeah, and this works two ways also. So if I were to say, populations, yes, the population's great. If I were to drag in another text box, and let's say I had another conversation, let's say I had this other conversation from somewhere else, right? Over here. I could also drag that into this just like any other text blocks. And it's now part of the conversation, but fed from over here. Top of our population. Cool. All right. So let me, I can hide the chat window. So what's cool about this is that obviously, yeah, we have the whole context here. We can continue this conversation. We have these two things here. one with multi and one with single. So single, I'll just try it out here just to show you. So this completion block is the same as a chat block, except it doesn't continue. It's only a single question and answer, right? So if I say hello, and it says, how can I assist you today? And if I have this, has this thing last here, right? I can take this out. Ooh, that's not what I wanted to do. Basically, I can take what the assistant says in completion and drag it out. And this reference becomes a reference to the dynamic thing that was said as opposed to a single part in the conversation, if that makes sense. So, you know, if I change this to say, you know, bananas are yellow, it will say some crap about bananas, right? And that'll show up here in my output. So if I had this chain to something else, you know, I can now create like a through line here without worrying about the reference being invalidated by more paragraphs. Okay. And again, that'll make more sense in a second. So let me kill these. So down here, we have two different versions. This basically means continue this conversation from a single block or a multi-block. If I continue this conversation as a single block, I'll get a completion block like we had before, except it has the context of the initial conversation while still being a single in, single out block. Right? We're talking about the population of gray wolves in different parts of the world. I don't know how we started talking about gray wolves, but yeah, wolves, right? So we have the same context here. So I can do the same thing this way and have the output be, you know, a static reference to a moving conversation that is rooted in this conversation, right? So if you think of this chat box as like the super prompt, and this is my, you know, prompt that gets dynamically filled by something else and then creates new information while making sure that it's still rooted in this super prompt. I can do the same thing with a larger chat box also. I can have another multi-layered chat box that feeds off the context of this previous conversation. Not super useful unless you wanted to have like a branching, you know, a bunch of different branching conversations that would help. But this becomes super interesting when you think about, okay, so let me go over here. Let me create a new chat box. I'm going to create a new chat box. And I'm going to say as systems. Anyone who's played with OpenAI and stuff, we know that, you know, saying, asserting things as system, you know, gives it kind of more prominence in how it behaves as opposed to just the user. Again, your mileage may vary. So if I have something here, like say, I have the system tell it that, you know, you're a tourism kiosk, right? I will give you a state name and you respond with a paragraph talking about the state, right? Kind of a goofy example, but again, we'll see in a minute here. So, all right, we've prompted it, and this could be a very long conversation to get to this point, but just for sake of demo here, okay, we have this long conversation. Now I take a single completion block. Why is my dragon being weird? Again, that's why it's released in a week and not today. Still some buggy stuff. All right, this is my completion block with this context, right? So, okay, we're primed. So if I say New York, I should get the New York response as requested up here. Yeah, please start with howdy. Say, give me a paragraph. Boom, there's my paragraph. Awesome. I'm going to take my paragraph over here. So we always have this for future use, depending on whatever we're doing in our flow here. And I'm going to say, cool, let's do something else. I'll drag in another completion. Make this a little smaller. I'm just going to say, give me a comma separated. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Sorry. Comma separated list of states in the U.S. And it did. As you can see, if you watch the previous video, that red means this is a list. So if I drag this list out, it references the original data, but as you can see, it gives me a drop down because this is a natural list. And in a natural list, I can have a selection, right? So here we have the list of states. Let's select California. And then, since we're doing text remixing and dragging and dropping, if I take this California, due to the input, we now have California going into the prompt that's super prompted by this chat, and then outputting over here to give me howdy, California, the Golden State, incredible destination, yada, yada, yada. And then I can change this to, Alaska, and we have this same kind of flow going on. Again, kind of a silly example, but if you zoom out, like, metaphorically, not literally, you can kind of see how you add in some images and add in some other things, and you can kind of do some interesting things here. Eventually, when I add in, for loops and other things, this gets pretty interesting, with for loops and like HTTP calls for other data being mixed with the chat can be pretty interesting. I'm going to have another video after this about images, which is really cool, but I hope this gives you an idea of like what I was going for in this whole, prompt priming, right? And then using it as a, trigger for other things downstream. And yeah, just building kind of like a, text-based application almost. Anyways, yeah, cool. This has been a bit too long. I'll see you in the next video about images. And as always, we're at remix.com. I'm gonna keep pushing that because every post I make will send out an email about what's going on and where it's released and what's it doing. But yeah, talk to you in a bit.